Planets, like people, like to test the waters before jumping into the pool. And on May 13th, Jupiter, the planet of good fortune and higher purpose, enters the zodiac sign of Pisces. Now, it's only there for a hot minute before it turns around, turns retrograde, backs up, and re enters the zodiac sign of Aquarius on July 28th. Hello, my name is Christopher Renstrom, and I'm your weekly horoscope columnist here on Astrology Hub. And this week, I wanted to talk to you about Jupiter's brief fling in the zodiac sign of Pisces. Now, we're all pretty much familiar with retrogrades. Retrograde is when a planet appears to be moving backwards in the sky during a certain amount of time. Now, obviously, the planet doesn't really move backwards in the sky, because if it was moving backwards in the sky, we'd all be in a lot of trouble. No, it's an optical illusion based on the varying rates of orbit and speed between the planets. Retrogrades are usually understood as a period of time when the planet is acting in reverse to its true nature. Like, for instance, when Mercury turns retrograde, Mercury, a planet that's connected to buying and selling, is seen as botched deals and incomplete forward passes when it's moving backwards or retrograde in the sky. So that's one idea of a retrograde, the idea that a planet behaves in the opposite way that it normally would when it's traveling direct. The second idea of a retrograde is that the planet is moving backwards in the sky, and perhaps the best way to sort of channel this energy is to go into a more reflective mode. And that's something that can be very, very helpful with sort of getting in touch with what the energy of the planet is really about and the message that it's trying to give. A third way of looking at a retrograde is as a regression, okay, a moving backwards, or even being pulled backwards into a situation by circumstances, being pulled backwards into a situation that you thought you were leaving. And it might be against your choice, or it might be due to your second thoughts. So retrograde can also mean backwards, it's backwards, but also a regression. I thought I was leaving this, and I don't feel right, or I don't feel strong or emboldened, or circumstances are forcing me to go back to a situation that I thought I had seen the last of. All of these sorts of things can happen during a planetary retrograde. But what's interesting about this particular retrograde is that it is a retrograde between signs. So in other words, Jupiter has been in the zodiac sign of Aquarius since about mid-December of last year, and it entered Pisces just recently, or enters Pisces this week. Sorry, I spend so much time in the future, I get like my present mixed up. But anyway, it enters the zodiac sign of Pisces this week. It will be there for a little while, stops, turns retrograde, and comes back out again and re-enters the sign of Aquarius. Now, what I like to liken this to is, let's say you've been invited to a potluck dinner, okay? And it's your job to bring the crudités. Okay, so everyone's going to bring their meal or their course to this potluck dinner, and you've driven in your car on over, and the crudités are all wrapped up, in the plastic and things like that, and they've stayed in their place, and you maybe even floured the little radishes and made them, really fancy, and something like that. So you pick up the tray of crudités, to enter the party, and you go on in, you knock on the door, you ring the doorbell, and the door opens, and it's like, oh my God, it's fabulous to see you. And you're like, hi, I'm here with the crudités. And everyone's like, oh, wow, they're famous. I can't wait, especially with that dip that you make. And that's when you realize, oh my God, I forgot the dip. So this is what a planet is like when it enters a sign, stops, turns around, and does a retrograde. It's kind of like showing up at a potluck dinner with your platter of crudités, realizing that you forgot the dip, that you forgot something, and you're like, wait, 1 minute, and turning around on one heel and leaving again and going back home so you can go and get the dip that goes along with your crudités. Now, what that does to the people at the party is it kind of leaves them hanging. Like, you showed up, they waved, they were expecting, you forgot something, you had to leave, and they're kind of like, okay, see you soon. I hope you can find the dip, or you don't even need the dip, but you decide to leave, or whatever. So this is what a planet entering a sign and then leaving it is like. Okay, so the way that we interpret that as astrologers is that the timing is off. All right, so the planet has entered with the full, purpose of being in the sign, realizes that it forgot something, turns around and leaves again. Okay, and it leaves everyone else kind of like hanging in limbo as to when the planet's going to be coming back again. All right. So a planet turning retrograde and going back to the previous sign usually is associated to false starts and equally misleading endings. And that's something that you want to be careful of during this period of time. It's May 13th to July 28th, when Jupiter is between the signs. So this could lend itself to a false start or misleading ending. In other words, you think that things are ready to go, or that you've finally decided, that's the way it's going to be, and it's not. The timing isn't right. Okay. And with retrogrades, you're always focused on timing. That is the thing that makes a retrograde a retrograde. Now, another thing to keep in mind here is really actually not another thing to keep in mind, but what this is about is that the time has not yet come. Okay, the timing isn't right. So whatever the false start and the misleading ending, the timing of it is not right. And that's a very important thing to keep in mind. Like, for instance, let's say you meet someone new during this period, someone that you're like really bowled over and it's exciting and it's so romantic. Okay, what you'll discover is that this person isn't ready to pursue. Okay, circumstances are such that this person can't act on their feelings towards you, or circumstances are such that you cannot act on your feelings towards this person. Another thing might be that, let's say you're invited to interview for a job. Interview goes spectacularly. It's really great. You love the person who's hiring, the person who's hiring loves you, but then you find out like they're not ready to go. They're not ready to like sort of seal the deal with you yet. A third thing is that you might be all systems go for a move or a change in your life, only to discover that there are circumstances or situations that dictate that you're going to have to postpone or delay this in some way. And this is an important thing to deal with, specifically with a retrograde planet between signs. You have to trust in the timing. And I really can't emphasize that enough. You need to trust in the timing. And what I thought I would do to illustrate that is a very quick story. Back in 1991, before your parents were born, I received a telephone call from Allure magazine, which is Condé Nast Publications, and Linda Wells at the time was the editor-in-chief. And I was asked to come and interview for an astrology column. Allure was just launching at that time, and they needed an astrology columnist, and they had heard about me, and they invited me in for an interview. The interview went swimmingly. I love Linda. I still love Linda to this day. She's like fabulous, and she always looked after me and was so terrific. And my time at Condé Nast was a really, really wonderful time. But I was kept on hold for months, for like about 3 to 4 months, about what their answer to whether I would be writing this horoscope column or not would be. And of course, you do the cards and you do the charts and you look at the transits, and it doesn't matter what you're doing because you're so obsessed with not having gotten that phone call that everything is red, or I'm a Capricorn, so everything is red with a pessimistic tint. But during that time, I staged all these scenarios in my mind. I'm being strung along. They're not serious about this, and I'm like, I think I'm like 30 or 31 at the point. And it's so ridiculous because when you're that young, you think like, maybe I should negotiate or play hard to get or call them up and say, I got an offer from another magazine. It's just all these really embarrassing things that you do when you're 31. But anyway, I didn't, thank heavens. I kept mum. I would check in like once every 3 weeks to see how things were going, and I would get the same vague, inconclusive answer until finally, after about 4.5 months, I got the phone call saying, come on in, let's talk about contract, let's talk about money, we're ready to go, we want you in the October issue, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I was with Allure for I think 10 or 11 years, something along those lines. No longer, I think it was like 15. But anyway, it was really wonderful. But what I learned from that was A, be patient, but B, believe, okay? And this is something which is really unique to the Jupiter retrograde. Jupiter is the planet of good fortune and higher purpose, okay? So we sort of treat Jupiter like a lottery ticket or a Charlie and the Chocolate Factory golden ticket, some sort of opportunity that drops into our life. Jupiter actually has a more collaborative relationship with us, and it really sort of tests your faith in good fortune, not like, having a lucky rabbit's paw or something like that, but your faith in the benevolence of Jupiter. And when it turns retrograde, it tests this faith. If your relationship to good fortune is easy come, easy go, or I was on a lucky streak and I guess it ran out, then it's fickle. It's a fickle relationship to fortune and to faith. And so, you end up talking yourself out of something, or not going to believe in this, and so you kind of rob yourself. Okay. But if your faith is true, if you're willing to wait, if you're willing to make the sacrifice, if you're willing to look past the fear, if you're willing to do one of the riskiest things that people can do nowadays, which is to hope, all right? If you're willing to hope and you're willing to place your faith in the universe, then more often than not, Jupiter, when it turns direct again, will reward you for your faith. So whatever the obstacle is that you will face around the time that Jupiter turns retrograde and backs up into the previous sign, that's going to be, in the July period, whatever the obstacle is that you face, don't assume that it will last forever, but instead treat it as a sneak peek of things to come when Jupiter finally enters the zodiac sign of Pisces in December.